Dharma is your duty to your own soul. Dollars make bigger dharmas doable. Make the most of your spins around on planet Earth. Welcome to the Dharma and Dollar Show with your hostess with the mostest, Kate Stillman. If you're repulsed by money, success, P&L statements, productivity hacks, don't listen. Stick to the Yoga Healer Body Thrive episodes released every Monday. But if you yearn for money talk, investments for your activism, real numbers in real time, if you want to get greedy for the good of all, stick around. And ask yourself before we begin, what do you want to make happen next?
Hello, it's Kate Stillman, and welcome back to the Yoga Healer Real Life Show. On today's show, T.S. Little on unlocking your subtle body anatomy. I have his book right in front of me right now. It's called Yoga of the Subtle Body, a guide to the physical and energetic anatomy of yoga. And all I've got to say is, it looks like a little book on the outside, but it's got that small type. Every page is packed with this very deep wisdom. And any of you who, like me, are interested in exploring the subtle and knowing the human technology that you have between your ears and between the crown of your head and the soles of your feet, you are going to love today's episode, which is sponsored by Awake Living.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Awake Living. If you are operating at a higher level of consciousness, if you know how to take care of your body, then you are eligible to apply for your free Awake Living coaching session at yogahealer.com/awake. We're coaching peeps who want to optimize their time, hit their goals, up their game, refine relationship resonance, and expand their wealth. Check it out at yogahealer.com/awake. This offer is time limited, so act now.
For those who don't know T.S. Little, he's an advanced yoga teacher, trainer, an advanced yogi. His site is prajnayoga.net. That's prajnayoga.net. I've been following T.S.'s work for, I don't know, maybe about 2 decades. It was fun to connect with him on the show. He was in his straw mud green building. And I remember when Yoga Journal did an article on his house, and it was cool because at the same time we were building a straw bale house with solar panels and in-floor heating. And I saw that he was doing the same thing in Santa Fe. And it was so cool to just connect with him in his home and see him there. So in any case, for those who don't know T.S.'s work, this is his 3rd book he's published, The Yoga of the Subtle Body. And he's just been a tried and true yogi. He studied with B.K.S. Iyengar in 1984. I was 11. He lived in Mysore, studying with Pattabhi Jois later on, and he went on to really develop his own system. He has a lot of somatic studies, including craniosacral therapy, and he's been very influenced by Ida Rolf and Feldenkrais and Thomas Hanna. And he's a longtime student of meditative and Buddhist studies, and that really comes out in this interview. He just pulls from all these different traditions. He has a master's in Eastern philosophy from St. John's College in Santa Fe, and he's written a few other books as well, The Thread of Breath and Meditations on a Dewdrop. I've got to say, this last release, which he put out a year ago, The Yoga of the Subtle Body, is really, to me, it's a reference book, for like when I'm ready to drop in a little deeper, crack it open, and you just get this hit. It's very poetically written. If you don't have it and you're a yoga teacher, you need to add it to your library. All right, without further ado, T.S. Little. I think that's why it stuck with me is we've done a ton of straw bale construction and we're building at the time. So it was like, oh, cool. We had the same vibe going with the solar panels and the straw bale. We actually did a solar dump from a roof of one of our buildings into our greenhouse to extend the growing season, which was really cool.
Oh, good idea.
They needed a place to dump the extra energy in the summer. And so it went under 4 feet of soil in the greenhouse to build a solar block. Yeah.
How fantastic.
So I'm really thrilled to have you on the Yoga Healer Real Life Show. I've been a fan. And congratulations on your new book actually have it right here. Yoga of the Subtle Body. So this is a big deal, this book. this was a big deal to write this book.
Hmm.
I would
Yeah.
love to start off with the impulse to write it and your biggest learnings in writing. Because when we want to write a book, it's different than what happens through the process of writing the book.
Hmm. Yeah. Right. Well, it was, it was definitely like running a marathon. It was just, especially the editing process, of course, when you put your ideas together and formulate them, it just requires so much fine tunement. But that goes with the subtle body because, really my interest for many years has been the intersection of, prana, the chitta prana, the awareness that we all have, and choose, the ligaments, the bones, the glands, and this is celebrated in so many beautiful ways. In terms of language in the yoga tradition, primarily around, the chakras. So, this exploration of the subtle body was just this immersion into really the very heart of the yogic practice and teaching.
Now, for those who are not familiar with subtle body, and for those who maybe have a little bit of an awareness of it, can you just how do you describe just even the concept of the subtle body to someone who's maybe very new to yoga, maybe has back pain, and they're coming because they heard yoga was good for their back pain?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the smallest pulse or heartbeat, just really the small shifts that occur inside. And so the subtle body is kind of a practitioner who's worked through, some of the big, musculature of the outer legs, outer hips, neck and shoulders, just really kind of, like a sculptor just keeps sculpting deep into the cave of our our energetic force. And so, yeah, the subtle body is, of course, profoundly, it's also that which can't be spoken of, that which can't be put into words. So then we're in yoga, we're, of course, we're practicing engaging with something that's outside of palpation or being able to touch altogether. And so that's a real invitation then into mystery and into a lot of experience of spaciousness inside. So it's kind of the physical, subtle body that explored is the marriage between the physical and the metaphysical.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as people do more yoga and do more meditation and the subtle body starts to reveal itself, it opens up a new operating system for the physiology, right? Like the sense of the more you excavate and create that cleaner, clear inner space, it's like it sort of ups the ante for how to self-maintain, like how to take care of ourselves. Will you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, self-care is so important. And I think, when people can have time to really practice in a very slow, way, which is just sensing their own breath or sensing their bone, to really slow the process down and really be in a place that's really protected and healing. And that allows for change to occur that when we can, slow down enough to just follow our breath and the smallest movement inside, I think that we start, doing what I call communion. We have like an inner communion time, and there's so many ways that the busyness of our lives, the high speed connectivity of all of our connections, with people and stuff in our life, it just pulls us away from our own true center. Yeah.
Yeah. So as people start to make their way back inward and they start to allow receptivity to happen, and communion starts to naturally occur, and they start to get more embodied, right? They have these hits of like what works for them and what doesn't work for them. right? And in this path where they start to become empowered as their own.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. That, I think really, when people can slow down and then they can just have this chance to even sort of, feel how much stress is built into our diaphragm and into our kidneys and into our back, and so I think so many of us just keep humming at such a high speed and never let up. And so, yeah, so when we can slow down and, maybe take a half hour for just breathing on our back and doing gentle movements. I do a lot of sensory awareness movement in my yoga these days. And that starts to, in and of itself, link us to our deep life force. And then if people can meditate, for 10 minutes and just sit with their spine upright, there's a sense of real kind of spaciousness that will come, and a feeling of joy that will come over time.
So the sense that there's an internal, like in the yoga tradition, right, where we have this teaching that like if you get quiet enough, you can access the bliss that's already there, always already there, right? The stillness, the peace, the auspiciousness, the joy that's already there. And we live in this culture where we're taught that that's outside of ourselves, right? Whether explicitly or implicitly, just through materialism and the whatnot of today, right? And so as people start to move their awareness inward and explore their breath and receive their own physiology, receive your own sensations, and you start to feel like, oh wow, like whoa, like peace is like I can't find that out there. I can actually just witness it arising in here and have that experience and learn from that and build and grow that. And then it shifts their relationships, right? To their own body and really just starts to shift their relationship to the cosmos, right? And in that, like, just will you describe that pivot for people? Because I'm sure as you've guided thousands of people through your books and through your teachings, you've witnessed that pivot, right? From seeking outside the self to seeking inside.
Yeah. Well, I think it does, require just a time away from the screen, because we're such today a screen-based culture, and at any moment we can flip open and start to go in through our inbox or into our sending and receiving devices, and so there has to be kind of a what's called in Zen, taking a step back. And when we can take a step back, even if it's just for 45 minutes in the course of a day, we can start to allow our own biorhythms to kind of reset, because when there's stress and there's anxiety and we get, caught up in the, in the buzz of activity, that it really affects the subtle body. So when we take that, hour-long practice, or if people have time in the course of the week, they drop in for 2 hours or the whole morning, and then, in what I like to call that communion time, in that space of communion, then, the biorhythms will reset, the glandular secretions, the breathing. And so, I think that taking the backward step at this time maybe is more important than ever as a way of people being able to, resource inwardly and connect to what I call the subtle body, but in some ways it's just kind of being, So people can do it under their favorite oak tree, out in the backyard, or on the trail, looking over the prairie, or on the mountain. So it can be done in many places, but a certain amount of unplugging is really important.
Yeah. And when we look at the trends in modern yoga culture, right, in many ways, there's more distraction in the classroom than there's ever been, right? And this is where people are going to get these tools, right, to have like how to go within. Potentially, this is like the quietest place they may go, the most quieting influence they may have, but there still might be a lot of music or incense or chatter or mirrors or what's your yeah, I mean, what's your take on that? If we just look at sort of the industry as a whole and what modern humans need.
Well, I think this contemplative time is really so valuable, and you don't have to go off to and be a monk, to do that. We can kind of build that inner time in the course of a 24-hour day. I mean, ideally we spend 12 hours on the inside and 12 hours out in the world, working. But we're kind of the opposite in our culture, where we work, sometimes 18 hours a day, and so yeah, all that distraction gets trapped in the tissues. That the world of your to-do list and all of your responsibilities of taking care of children and parents and checkbook. So yeah, all that distraction gets kind of caught up in our tissues, and so when we can step away and unplug, there's a way in which the body will kind of really even spontaneously start to heal. But quiet is a rare commodity these days, and solitary reflection is a rare commodity. So yoga studios, yeah, they can be really stimulating, and they can be really hot and sweaty, and and loud, and there's a place for that. There's a place for that, but also I think when we're healing in the soul journey or in the subtle body, it's that connection, the pathway in, and it's not easy to do. It might be easy to kind of stay in some ways sort of caught in the mirror of the outer yoga world, and to be really working on yoga poses and how many handstands can I do, and I've certainly been there in my own career, like how good am I with my body, and so we all kind of start there, and then at least for me, then there's been this progression through the layers or the strata of my own psyche and my own body, the layers of the onion, peeling back more and more and more, and it's remarkable when we start to get to those layers of membranes that are so thin inside, kind of transparent. It's kind of a vulnerable place to be. It's a place where we're, maybe not as protected, but the heart bleeds, the heart feels more, the heart is more expansive, and the awareness, as the Tibetans describe, awareness becomes more clarified. It gives more, like dawn, when just the first light, and without any particulate in the air, like here in New Mexico, the light is just very, very sattvic, or very soft. And so, we're clarifying the body and the mind, together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And as that happens, like if we look at the vibrational level, right, it's like a totally different vibrational experience than when there's all that busyness and the stress and the loudness and the negativity. If we look at like modern news, right, just like the negativity, the fear, these really different emotions than subtle peace and expansion and joy, and just the vibrational levels are very different. So if we look at like the teachings in Ayurveda of and yoga, that the observations around consciousness moving from subtle to gross, and as someone moves their awareness from gross to subtle, which you pointed out, like from the outer world to the inner world, like that can be tough because there's already propensity, there's already momentum. If you're in the world of distraction, right? There's going to be a momentum towards distraction. And so just when people start to make that pivot, and they start to invest their awareness internally, and they start to refine their vibration, right? Clarify their vibration.
Right. Well, I guess maybe first the task is to kind of sense that everything is vibration. So, the rumble of the recycling truck, or the rumble of the refrigerator, or, the pulse of my bloodstream, or my thoughts. My thoughts are basically vibratory patterns that form, and you get formed as particular ideas and memories. So, it does help to really refine vibration, and I mean, people who make wine, of course, do something similar, and people who play clarinet and violin, and, a really good athlete is like, there's this process of refinement until, there is, of course, described in the yoga a state that's outside of vibration. It's called the Nirshabda, or the soundless place. And that, of course, is the name of the heart. People don't really either recognize or understand that the heart chakra, it's called the Anahata chakra, literally means the soundless place, or the place that has never been struck. And so there's a place inside of us that, that is even outside of the field of vibration. And that's, what the yogis talk about is the empty awareness, or the pure awareness. And so, so at the end of our exhalation, at the end of our exhalation in meditation, or in shavasana, at the very end of class, there's just like a moment where we can really touch into this, this place that's very spacious and really delightful. And I think many people have felt it and touched it. It's just actually realizing, or seeing it and feeling it, and then the outer world, the world of form, and which could get caught into cycles of pleasure and pain. Everything in the world might bring about pleasure for us, or it might bring about pain. And so that sort of pain pleasure cycle is one that we typically are caught in. But then there's this other level, other layer underneath, which is outside of that, which is very joyful. And so, yogis describe it as the body of joy, or the body of delight. And there's a difference. There's a difference between the pleasure, the feeling in the pleasure body, and the feeling of the body of delight. But that takes a little while to kind of, delineate. It's really, it is important to just really touch into, the spirit that always dwells within. And we all spend years kind of looking outward, either trying to get really good grades, or be the best on the playing field, or having the best yoga studio, or whatever might be motivating us outwardly. We all kind of do that to some extent. And so as our years go by, in some ways yoga gets, for me, after 30 years, it's so much kind of really more delightful and more richer, and, even more just really super califragilistic than it ever has been, because it's this touching into this place outside of all of our hopes and fears and agendas in our life.
Yeah, it's huge. We're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, T.S. is going to talk about your ear chakra, or your ear almost chakra, and what's going on with your temporal bone in relation to time and space. It's really cool. So stay tuned.
You've done some serious work. You're operating at a higher level of consciousness. You know how to take care of your body. You'd like to uplevel other aspects in your life, your space, your time, your dharma, your flow, and your body. Ether, air, fire, water, earth. I'm taking a posse of peeps into the Awake Living course. 50 people will be selected to join this expedition. We're opening the doors to anyone who is feeling great and wants to uplevel how they align their life. Time optimization, space alignment, hitting goals, wealth expansion, and day-to-day ease. If you're interested in Awake Living, we have a super fun process for you to experience. Go to yogahealer.com/awake. Sign up for your free Awake Living coaching session. During your free Awake Living coaching session, you will refine the next version of you. As a bonus, you'll receive the 60-minute workshop, Insider Scoop on how I optimize my day as a yoga mom, tribe leader, and social entrepreneur. Go to yogahealer.com/awake and sign up for your free Awake Living coaching session.
So if we really look at some of like the baseline teachings for human beings in terms of daily routines from yoga and from Ayurveda, there's a pretty standard daily ritual that involves going to bed early enough to wake up early enough to witness the dawning of a new day, to hydrate, to eliminate, to then play around in the subtle body, right? To like go home. And when I look at, I used to have a yoga studio, I used to teach a lot, and in class, often classes, our morning classes, this was a while back, but they'd often like start at like 9, like the day's half over, like there's this this sense of there's already a momentum in action. And then there's a lot of people I know from working more in the entrepreneurial world that they really don't exercise, right? They don't even like do any sort of like deeper breath experience in their body till after work or till lunchtime, right? And so it's hard to imagine, isn't it? The day in and day out, year in and year out reality of not making space for the self in the beginning part of the day. Do you want to just touch a little bit on what's going on physiologically with the importance of this ancient ritual?
I think practically, it's good for people to, when they get up, to take a pee and go right to their cushion and sit for anywhere from 5 minutes to 45 minutes. And that can vary day by day in terms of the demands on us. And so, one of my teachers always described that as empty before you begin. And so if we can kind of, wipe our slate clean and sort of open up our cobwebs and be available, be more, vessels, open vessels, for the course of the day, that's really great. We could also think, of course, that it even begins before waking in the dream time. And a lot of my own personal work is in tracking dream, and the content in dreams that are basically, vibrations, of the subtle body and the deep psyche. And so, so then we sit between sleep and wake, we sit between dream and wakefulness. And that's the liminal time, that's the loaming hour, as the old British poets used to describe it. It's that twilight. And that's in the first part of the day, that's a valuable time to practice. And the most important thing is that people don't go right to their screen. So if you get up and you go to your screen, you've had it. You're in, you're in the maze of your inbox and all that drops under your lap. And so really we have to go to the cushion prior to screen time. And that's when this investigative time is really, really so special. Maybe if people get up at 4 a.m, you could sit between 4 and 5 instead of flip-flopping around on the bed. Just take that time to to really work towards this spacious awareness, or just notice the thoughts that come up. Notice all the flurry of thoughts. It definitely requires some discipline. I think maybe people forget that these days, that yoga definitely requires, a certain amount of discipline. The forgotten discipline. And people think of it as tapas as well. Tapas is like, really working my body and really going for a big workout. So we think physical discipline, but really psychic discipline is so important, because that leads to what's called viveka, or, discriminating awareness. And we all need discriminating awareness in the course of a day. There are so many things that come up that we have to negotiate and navigate with our children and our aging parents. And then we collectively need to be more, have more discriminating awareness when it comes to the utilization of the resources we have, or the way we treat, people of difference, or people of color, or people of different belief system. And so that, the seed of that discriminating awareness comes from that, that time of care, of reflective awareness, which involves a kind of tenderness. It requires time. And, again, I like to call it, communion, inner communion.
Yeah. It seems to me more and more that, people often say, like, I don't have time, but there's it's just a sign of the rajas, or that sort of external busyness and this lack of viveka, right? This lack of discriminating, like, well, just take your phone away for a week, right? And then see how much time you have, or right, or like take away screens except for essential use, for whatever, right? And then all of a sudden, there's ways that we can create boundaries to make time open.
Well, exactly. Yeah, I mean, time is what we perceive it to be, and many of us, experience it as just going really fast. like the rest of our life. It's just, like you can drive 85 now in Texas. Our
Whoa!
our life is just, just going at such a high speed. And so, yeah, slowing down and taking time is so important. But, the subtle body, of course, which is my interest, the bone on the side of this cranium is the critical bone that relates to one's sense of breath and inner space and time, and that's the temporal bone. So the temporal bone houses the ear, just structurally, and the temporal bone is shaped like a wheel on the side of the skull. It's almost like its own chakra. And so when we meditate, and people can do this, you can take this home with you, is when you're sitting, the whole objective really at the outset is to relax the temporal bone and to release all the fascia around the ear. And that we do primarily, of course, by releasing the TMJ, the jaw, which is such a receptacle for speed and strain and stress. So when all this starts to let go, then the temporal bone floats. And just physiologically, the brain can start to release and the alpha rhythms kick in and the vibration slows down and the reptilian brain or the slow moving brain is more palpable or available. And so, so the gateway in is really through the ear, the temporal bone, and the side of the skull.
I've been noticing, I've been drawn to foam rolling that all around there. And it is that. And you can feel the shift of time through space, right? If there's no space, you compress time, right? In that sense of when you open space, you open the field of time. Yeah, it's big.
Well, time, of course, gets trapped. One other thought about time is it gets trapped in the body. So people get stuck in time zones, like from, when they were 3 years old or 7 years old or in the third grade, something happened in the circumstances of one's own history. And so we can get, especially in the traumatic experience, we can get trapped in time. And I think that in some ways we're all trapped in time in a way, and the identifications we make about who we are. And so the subtle body definitely relates to working in this way around, time or time zones, get trapped inside of us. And in my own personal practice, I've worked for years on events that happened to me when I was in the third grade and how my body started to take its shape and its own metabolic hum from how I felt about myself at that age. So we all have time, kind of trapped in our tissues.
One of the things I do in my Living Ayurveda course is have people do a really extensive health history to start to see that, like when certain vibrations got set with symptoms and physiology and whatnot. And it is one of the most healing ahas, and people start to realize that they can know themselves more deeply, and in that knowing they can start to unravel the pattern. It's huge. So if anyone hasn't done this, like, think about it. Take some time.
That's really just one of the thoughts that really, of course, brings us to the present. And so the present, everyone talks about, be present, or the present moment is where it's at, and so it's hard to be really present for our breath, for our thoughts, for our feelings, for our hopes, our fears, our jealousies, our irritations, our restlessness. To be really just note that's what's coming up in the present. And so, I think when people can spend that 15 to 45 minutes in this communion time, they can start to come into presence. And then that becomes the place they go back to again and again. Once you have a kind of sense of enough of what that is, that becomes your home base. You touch into that, you go back to that again and again and again.
Yeah. And it goes deeper and deeper, right? I mean, so I would love to hear in your writing the book, what happened in your own subtle body explorations. I mean, if you can encapsulate that in a few minutes.
Well, it was I mean, it was sort of like, skydiving, although I've never done that before. But, when you start opening up this part of the practice and the investigation around the chakras and the spinal shaft where, the deep vitality flows, it's boundless. And I was, I always felt like, oh, gee, I can say this, but then there are also so many other ways to describe the body and think about it. And so in some ways it's like 3 books in one. There's so much information in that book because it's such a rich and vast, ocean of teaching, and it all dwells, right here underneath the skin. And so those of us who are interested in this or passionate about it like I am, it's that, again and again, feeling all that comes up for us. So, I've matured a lot since I finished the book. In fact, I could write it again and it'll have a whole different spin to it because even in the last year since completing it, I see more and, my lens is even a little more clear. So there's beauty in that.
Yeah. And just in closing, like, how does that change your perspective or enhance your perspective of aging? Like, we live in this culture that is so afraid of aging, and what you just described is like, hey, I keep getting better. Like, this keeps getting like, and it takes a while. I mean, that's another theme that's come up in this conversation is time. Is time as an asset, time as a compadre on the path, and the sense of like, it takes a while. Like, we do start with a very, no matter how we come into yoga, we're usually coming from the outside, going into the inside. And then it takes a while, and the practice matures, and our experiences in our subtle body mature, our depth of presence matures, our ability to go beyond vibration becomes more accessible. Gateways start to open, new realizations start to happen. All of a sudden, things that we've just read about become real.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it has to do with kind of a transition. And this is a big one for, those of us who are on the yoga path or, the Qigong or, any of the internal arts, is that we kind of move from the body-based practice to the psychic interior and the emotional, the emotions, which are definitely impactful on the subtle body. And so, the practice for me has gotten less physical. In the beginning, it was, was very athletic for me, as, many practices are in the first 4, 5, 10 years. And so, so then as we age, we realize, wait a minute, my body, I basically have to keep everything intact, keep my body together. But really where I'm going to spend my time is in the psychic interior and, where the winds of spirit, flow. And so then we become the spirit whisperer, listening to those winds. And so as one ages, the practice does it just keeps getting better and better. And there's a phrase in Zen, it says that hair becomes white, but the spirit doesn't become white. And so, we age, our body ages, but in some ways, mind, heart become, move more and more towards that boundlessness or that heartfeltness or that, great compassion or that great communion with all beings and all things. So yeah, just gets better as we age.
Amen. Well, thank you so much for your time, T.S. It's been a pleasure, and I love to share your book because it's for so many people, it's something that it's a gateway, right? It's like that sense of like, oh, it's all in here. That sense that the best of the best of evolution, everybody owns. Right? Pretty amazing asset we're all having.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a joy to be with you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
All right, podcast listeners and sharers, thank you so much. And I just want to say thank you for putting us over the edge of the 1 million downloads. We did it with the Jason Niemer episode. If you missed that episode on acro yoga and deep trust and communication, compassion, and conversation, I think you'll enjoy it. That was last week. You can always go back and listen. Also, these are being posted on the YouTube channel at Yoga Healer. And if you want to see us talking, you can. You kind of get this hit. So you're more than welcome to check us out on YouTube. Thank you so much for being listeners and sharers and spreaders. This whole thing grows word of mouth. And I'm just so appreciative of you helping me get great guests on the show. Namaste and have a great day.
Yoga Healer Real Life Show with Kate Stillman. Yoga Healer.